right, so today's lesson is about box and whisker plots. You guys have seen box and whisker before, but we're going to review that information today. So as you look, there is an example of a box and whisker plot. The reason why we call it a box and whisker is because it has a box and it also has whiskers. So that's where it gets its name from. But essentially, the whole point behind a box and whisker plot is it represents 5 key pieces of information. And so we call this the 5 summary statistics. Okay? So each box plot has 5 specific numbers that we have to pay attention to. The first number is called the minimum. So we represent the minimum with the first value on the box and whisker. Make sure you label your box and whisker right now. The next important thing you want to represent is the maximum, so the highest amount. That is represented by the very last point on a box and whisker plot. The next one that we want to talk about is the median. So this is the one that you've heard before, the number that is in the middle when you put all the numbers in order from least to greatest. So we represent the median by drawing that line inside the box. And then the last 2 pieces of information are called the lower quartile and also the upper quartile. And so the lower quartile is known as Q1. That is essentially the middle of the lower half of the data. Okay? So what happens is you split the data in half, and then you look at the median, the middle of the lower half. Then you come back and you look at the upper quartile, which is called Q3, and that is the median of the higher half of the data. So we'll look at an actual example of this with the set of numbers that we have. So look at this set of numbers, okay? We have 4, 4, 10, 10, 10, 14, 15, 16, 22, and 25. Our job right now is to find the 5 summary statistics, so minimum, Q1, median, Q3, and the maximum. So the lowest value in this set of data, the lowest value in this set of data is 4. So we represent that with our minimum. Okay. Then we have, let's go to the highest. So I'm just going to do these the easiest way I know. The highest value here is 25. And then now it's time to find the number that's in the middle. So remember, to find the number that's in the middle, we can go ahead and start to cross out the numbers from left to right. So for example, we can keep crossing out until we get to the center. Notice what happens here when we get to the center. We're left with 2 numbers. So we're left with 10 and 14. Remember, to find the median of 2 numbers, we take them, add them together. So if we do 10 plus 14, that is 24. And then we do 24 divided by 2, which gives us 12. So the median of this set of data is 12. So that means smack dab in the middle right here, 12 is our median. Okay? Now, let's find the lower quartile, or Q1. The way that you find the lower quartile, or Q1, is you look at the lower half of the data. So we're just going to pay attention to this section here that is the low end of the data. And what we want to do is we want to find the middle of this set of numbers. So we do the same thing we've done before. Cross out the 4 and the 10, and keep working your way until you get to the center. And notice the number that is in the center of the lower half of the data is 10. All right. We go to the upper quartile, so we look at the upper half of the data. So I'm going to look at this right here. I'm going to cross them out until I get to the center. And notice we're left with 16. So 16 is the upper quartile. These are your 5 numbers, statistics, or 5 number summary for this set of data. Once we find our 5 number summary, then we can go ahead and create our box and whisker plot. And so all you're going to do is you're going to put a point on the number line where each of these data values is. So for example, 4, we can say 4 is like about right here. So we're going to put a point there for our lowest. Then we have the lower quartile at 10. We have the median, which is at 12. So we can say 12 is maybe about right here. So this is just an estimate. So we can say 12 is there. We also have 16 as our Q3 or upper quartile. And then last but not least, we have 25 with our highest value. Okay? And then we're just going to make the box and whisker. So we're going to make our whisker. And then we make our box. With this line representing the median. That is how you make a box and whisker plot. Now, I want you to go ahead and try example 2 on your own. See if you can find the 5-number summary for that set of data. All right, so as we try to set up the 5 summary statistics here, I know I need to find my minimum. I need to find Q1. I need to find the median. I need to find Q3. And then I need to find the maximum. Okay? The minimum is, once you put it in order, that's 15. That's easy to see. The maximum, once you put it in order, is 95. That's easy to see. And the median should be 60. Okay? So the median is 60. Now remember, to find the lower quartile, or Q1, you're going to pay attention to the lower half of the data. Okay? So we're going to pay attention to find the middle of this. So 15 and 40 we remove. But then we're left with 20 and 35 in the center. Well, in order to find the median of that, we add 20 and 35 together. And 20 and 35 together, so 20 plus 35, that is going to give us 55. And then we divide that by 2. And so 55 divided by 2 gives us 27.5. And then we're left with the upper quartile. Okay? We're left with 80 and 85 in the center of the upper quartile. Well, when we add that together, so if we do 80 plus 85, we end up with 165. And if we divide that by 2, we're going to be left with 82.5. So that means Q3 is 82.5. Okay? So that's how you find your 5 summary statistics. From here, you can create a box and whisker plot. And so I'm going to very briefly sketch one. And so here is a general representation of this graph when you set it up. And so yours should look something like this. Probably better, hopefully better. All right, let's try one last one. Look at example 3. All right, when you look at example number 3, just take a look at the 5-number summary here. So you should have minimum of 6, lower quartile of Q1 of 7, median of 9.5, Q3 of 12.5, and then last but not least, you should have a maximum of 19. All right, so now that you know how to create a box and whisker plot, you know how to identify the 5 summary statistics, what I want to take a quick second is to remind you of how to read a box and whisker plot. And there's one thing I need you to add to your notes. So for every box and whisker plot, it's broken up into 4 sections. And so what that means is that each part of a box and whisker plot represents 25% of the data. So for example, this part of the whisker, so this part of the box and whisker plot, that whisker is 25% of the data. This first box is 25% of the data. The second box, 25% of the data. And last but not least, this last whisker is 25% of the data. So each part of your box and whisker plot represents 25% of the data. So what I want you to do is to actually go through and read this box and whisker plot, see if you can answer the questions, and then determine the appropriate answers. Check back in to see if you got them right. All right, so check your answers for number 1 through 7. Now what we want to do is we want to pay attention to numbers 8 through 10. Also for number 7, remember to find the range. You do the highest minus the lowest. But for number 8, it says, what percentage of the data is below the upper quartile? So first off, we need to identify where the upper quartile is. So that is located here at Q3. And then it says how much or what percent of the data is below. So that means we're going to look at all of these sections that are below the upper quartile. And so since that's a total of 3 different sections, and each section represents 25% of that data, well, that means that 75% of the data is located below the upper quartile. Okay? Let's look at one more just to make sure you guys are understanding it. So for number 9, it says, let me get my graph. Number 9, it says what percentage of the data is located between the lower quartile and the median. So remember, the lower quartile is located here. This is our Q1 or lower quartile. And then the median is here. Okay? And so it says in between those two pieces of information, how much data is there? Well, there's 25% because that's only one section. So that's 25% of the data. Okay? Now, I want you guys to try to answer number 10 and 11, see what you can get. All right, last thing, I want you guys to see if you can answer the questions below. So I want to see if you guys can identify or compare, two sets of data. So essentially, I want you to look at these sets of data. We have box plot A, box plot B, and see if you can answer the questions for this information.